Okay, so we are live in the Google universe and wherever you are watching this. I am Abiola Abrams, the author of the sacred Bombshell Handbook of Self-Love. I'm also a columnist and a coach, and I am thrilled tonight to present to you Miss Alissa McGowan. Alissa is not only the editor of my book, which was just nominated for an African American Literary Award in self-help, but she also is a senior editor of Red Pen for Rent, which is a full-service publishing concern that offers services in marketing, in editorial, in leaving out something, design, which for me as well. And so welcome, Alissa, to this chat.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. One of the reasons why I really wanted us to have this public conversation is, as you know, there's the saying that everyone has a book in them, and, nowadays everyone seems to think so. So we'll find out from you whether that's a good thing or not a good thing. But I really wanted to offer to my audience, certainly, an expert who could answer their questions on what the path is for them as writers or aspiring writers and what the future of publishing holds. So what is your background, Alissa? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English literature, and I don't know, during the time that I was pursuing my master's, I got a job. I was living in Los Angeles, and I got a job working in the proofreading department of Graphic Gorb, which was what do they call it? Like a full-service creative facility, I believe was the description. And we did a lot of like advertising campaigns and things like that. But so I was in the proofreading department, and so it was my job to read a lot of stuff and make sure that our clients didn't send out any published materials with errors in them. So I did that for a few years and graduated with my master's degree and moved on to go produce a catalog for one of our clients, one of Graphic Orb's clients, which meant that I was basically, I project managed the whole thing, so I had to coordinate the car specialists and the writers and the vendors and, like the people who were printing and binding the books for us. And I had to coordinate all of these efforts and make sure that everyone got text in on time. Then, of course, I had to edit it and send it out to proofreading. And so I did that for that one catalog because their person had left. And anyway, I kind of just stepped in to fill a void, and they really needed someone. So I did that for that brief period of time, and then I decided that I wanted to start my own business. So I did, basically. My last year at CSUN, Cal State Northridge, which is where I got my master's, we did what did I do? I don't know. I had a class where I had to make a website, like a personal website. I think it was part of my culminating experience. And I had been toying with the idea since then. I had thought this was like a year after I'd graduated. So a year prior, I'd built this website that was just like about me with my CV. And I had been thinking about going freelance with editing. And then I was just like, well, I might as well just start my own company. So I did, and Red Pen for Rent was born in 2012.
Okay, now a lot of people, let's begin at the beginning because people are listening with different levels of knowledge and expertise about publishing. What does an editor do? And what kinds of editors are there in the world? And which kind are you?
Well, editors do lots of things, and there are many different types of editing. From developmental editing, which is basically going from a rough draft and just kind of like coaching, basically. It's like giving people guidance to try to improve that rough draft on their own. So it's and also, by the way, I should mention that the definitions of the various types of editing are very fluid, and not everyone defines all the categories the same way, and they all bleed into each other, which made figuring out a pricing structure very challenging. But so there's developmental, which is basically working with rough drafts. And then once you get to a final draft stage, it might be substantive editing or copy editing, which depends on how much editorial intervention a specific manuscript would need. So substantive editing deals with both bigger picture issues and smaller things. Oh, look, my cat wants to say hi.
Hello, kitty.
Hi, Benny. Go away now. Um, and then copy editing is more the minute details, more like if there are no major structural problems or organizational issues, like your book, for instance, we had a lot of organizational things to work out, which is why we went sort of the substantive editing route, although we were sort of still figuring out categories and things then, so we kind of, but anyway, I'm rambling, and
no. I think it's all valuable for people to hear. And I don't think that this is rambling at all, because people assume, like, I'm a writer, this is what I do for a living, why do I need an editor? But for me, it was incredibly valuable to work with you, and the editing relationship, the editor-writer relationship is a very personal relationship, because it's literally, that you said that there's, not only just, basic editing involved, but there's also a bit of coaching. And so, there were moments where I was procrastinating on getting things to you, and I was like, oh, yeah, you can't do it, forget it, this will come out 6 years from now or whatever. You being like, no, you're brilliant, you're awesome, you can do it just like I do with my coaching clients. Coaches need coaches. And another thing that was, incredibly helpful was, just you having another eye and being able to have, like with some people I'm sure would be hard conversations and be like, look, this is working or this is not working, and helping us to kill our babies, basically. So I remember, like you said, with us, like, figuring out things, I always feel like, for me as a coach who works, somewhat actually solidly with spiritual tools as well for my coaching clients, that some procrastination, there's usually a reason behind it. And with mine, that we found that the book was taking a very different path than I thought, what I thought that it would be in the beginning. And so a big turn in the road came when you said, to cut like a couple hundred pages. People, the book's like 400 pages now. It was like, it could have been twice as long, easily, without Alissa. When you said to me, like, look, let's do something really courageous. You have written about relationships, and you're a love columnist who's writing a book about self-love. And let's cut out all of these, couple hundred pages that are about love and relationships. This can be another book. And I would imagine that, I know for me it was a decision that I needed to make over a week or two, that some of those things, that kind of resistance that you probably can get from writers when you're urging them to kill their babies, can be a challenging thing. Yes? Can you speak a little bit to that in general?
Yes. A huge part of my job, aside from obviously being able to, not just look at the big picture, but also the minute details, and, there's a lot going on with editing, and you have to kind of look at a lot of things at once and be able to do that. But the other huge thing that I have to do, and in having my own company and in being a project manager also, is to figure out how to, like, I agonize forever over emails that I send to my clients to make sure that I'm putting it in a way that is constructive and is, because of course, I write too, and I know how close we can get to our writing and how hard it is to accept any kind of criticism, no matter how well-intentioned, and so I have to work very hard to make sure that everything that I say to people is as encouraging and tactful, and because like sometimes, honestly, sometimes I'm reading something and I'm just thinking, oh, this is just crap. But you can't say that to someone, and it's not that their whole story is crap, obviously. You know, like there'll just be like one thing and you're just like, oh really? Like you're gonna use that cliched turn of phrase again, or you know, like there'll be things that writers will do
But I
over
feel
and
like
over
you
again.
do say that. I feel like you do say that, which I appreciate. I'm glad to be told, but I feel like you do need to be kind of frank and kind of bold and be like, yeah, you know, don't say that again. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, like it's a very fine line because you have to be firm about it. I mean, you can't just say this is crap, you know, you have to say this isn't working and this is why. And it's all about how you say things, and that's a huge part of what takes up my day, honestly, is figuring out how to say things in the best possible way to, you know, to keep everyone, and I mean not just because I mean I only work with people that I think can take honest criticism, so it's not that I'm sugarcoating things or lying to people in any way. It's just that I want to make sure that I'm saying it in a way that someone's going to be receptive to. Like I told you when I was reading your book, you know, like so much of what you write about is stuff that my therapists have been telling me for years, and just the way that they said it didn't click in the same way that the way you said it. And so how you say things to people is very important.
Thank you, Alissa. Thank you so much. Well, one of the I want to just take a step back and let's talk about writing in general, because I know that a lot of people who may be watching this, you know, are at different stages of wanting to birth a book in the world. So let's start with someone who maybe has a stack of notes and wants to turn it into a book, either fiction or nonfiction, and what that means in this day and age. Is that when they should approach you? Should they wait until they have written a complete draft? Can you speak to some of those topics?
Well, I mean, usually people approach me after they have at least a draft, and but not always. I mean, recently I had someone call me who was halfway through his manuscript, and he basically just wanted someone to tell him to keep going. And we just chatted for a few minutes, and he was telling me that, you know, he's like, I'm in the middle, and I'm just kind of in this, like, scary place. And I'm like, no, it's just keep going, and you can do it. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad I called you. I'll hopefully be back in 6 months to do editing. And you know, so occasionally I get people who just need a pep talk, which is great, because I consider that very much a part of my job. I mean, the writer-editor relationship is very much a partnership in my view, and it is, like you said, very personal. And, you know, I mean, writing is very personal, so anyone who's working with you on your writing has to be someone that you can be, like, there's a certain intimacy in the writer-editor relationship, you know, so it has to be someone that you're comfortable with. And, you know, I'm not the right editor for every project, and any editor who says that they are is full crap. But that was not your question, and now I totally forgot what your question was.
That was valuable though, because, you know, people don't even know like what to do when they want an editor. Now that they've figured out, oh, I need an editor, well, you know, how do I know that someone is the right editor? That, for example, you know, with my first book, which was published by Simon & Schuster, as happens in publishing, things go into flux, and the editor who purchased my book, you know, for Simon & Schuster ended up, you know, leaving the company, and she wanted to bring my book with her, but they wouldn't allow her to, and so I was assigned a different editor. With this process, it was different because I got to choose an editor, so I had narrowed it down to 3 people, and then I had narrowed it down to, you know, interviewing you and another person, and that I felt like I related to you. I loved the books that you know, said were your favorite books. I felt like we, you know, were like-minded, but we also had differences where, for example, things that culturally that I might speak about that someone from a similar cultural background would see in a shorthand, you wouldn't see that shorthand, so you would be able to be like, no, what is a Guyanese kwekwe? Can you elaborate on that? Because not everyone's going to know what that is, or whatever it is. And, you know, and I thought that you had a very strong company also, and I related to you for a number of reasons. And so I recommend, that people do their due diligence and do their homework, that just don't turn your work and your baby over to anyone, as you are beginning. And I think that it's smart to, to start this relationship when you have a full draft. But as you were saying, it could go any sort of way. So the question was, if someone is an aspiring writer and they don't know what the path is, because it's kind of seems like the wild, wild west now, like you could almost do anything, what should they do?
Just write. Really, I mean, that's what it boils down to in the end, is that you just have to do it. Writing is hard work, really, really, really hard work, and you just have to make yourself do it. And I actually have been suffering from what I call chronic writer's block for the past, 10 years, and I took a creative writing class in community college before I transferred to university, and I started writing this story that was inspired by a friend of mine having a heart attack at 28, and I abandoned it because I couldn't figure out what happened next. There was this scene in the hospital, and then I got to the end of the scene, and I was like, I don't know. And so then it's just been festering on my computer for years and years. And I would sometimes go back and edit it, because being an editor, of course, it's easier for me to edit than it is for me to actually do the hard work of writing. So it just kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And then randomly, like a week ago, I just sat down and started doing it, and it went from 4,000 words to 13,000 words. So, I mean, and people have been telling me that. I mean, I, of course, read a lot of, writers' blogs, and I follow a lot of writing and editing groups in LinkedIn, and so I'm connected to this community of writers, and I'm kind of try to keep an eye on what's going on, and I see that kind of advice all the time, like, just write, you just have to do it. And for years and years and years I was like, yeah, okay, whatever you say, but really at the end of the day you just have to do it.
Yes.
So that's my advice. Write. Just sit your ass down in a chair and write.
That is so huge.
Every single day.
Say that last part. I stepped on your last words. What was the last part?
Every single day.
Every single day, yes. I know that, people are like, oh, great, thanks a lot, Abiola and Alissa. I could have, but it's true. It's so important that, people, when they would ask, with the first book, Dare, which was fiction, how long did it take to write this book? And I would say 30 years, because it literally took like my whole life up until that point. Also, to have the courage to step into the word writer, that it can be very daunting, just even to own that. And so there are other books that, I've written before, books that I wrote as a teenager or in college or whatever, that never saw the light of day, just because I was just so intimidated by that label of writer.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is getting comfortable with and stepping into your own voice. Like when I was younger, it was harder, like the older you get, the easier it is to just be you, or at least I hope that it's that way for most people. So I think that writing also has gotten easier for me as I've gotten older, because I've gotten more comfortable with just, what, only you can tell your story. And so, just own it. You just have to own your own voice and own your own story and just tell it. Just go for it.
Yes, just go for it. Well, speaking of going for it, let's talk a little bit about the publishing industry and what route, writers should or can take, because, right now they could kind of do anything. That when my father wrote his books when I was growing up, my father is a self-published author, and at that time, I had a garage full of, books that he would then physically sell. But now things are really different, and so can you speak a little bit about that, about what publishing is presently, where we are, where we were, where we are, where we're going?
Well, I think that it's fairly obvious to anyone who's paying attention that the traditional publishing model is not long for this world. It's just not sustainable. You know, publishing houses don't have money, and they're not getting more money because authors are starting to realize that why would you want to give up creative freedom for prestige, I guess, but the prestige of traditional publishing is diminishing by the with each passing year. So, and self-publishing is becoming more accepted and far less stigmatized than it once was, So as we're seeing this shift in the whole world of publishing because, as an author, and especially as a first-time author, it really doesn't make sense anymore to try to go through a traditional publisher because I mean, not only are they going to limit your creative freedom, I mean, they're going to tell you, like, you need to make these changes in order for us to publish this book. They'll be like, oh, we love your story, but can you, I mean, you've had experience with traditional publishers. I'm sure that they had a lot of say in the final product, and, they do the marketing. Well, kind of, but they, like in terms of like designing the cover and stuff, you don't really get a lot of say in that. And then marketing though falls mostly to the author, and even people who are established moneymakers are still at least partially responsible for their own marketing these days. Like most of the best-selling authors that well, not that I only read best-selling authors, but even some of the very popular mainstream authors that I read are in charge of their own social media campaigns and things. So traditional publishers don't have the money to put into marketing, and especially not into marketing for untested writers. So you have to do all the work, and they get to make a lot of the decisions, and they take a lot of your profit. So as much as I am at heart a serious literary snob, and I'm very concerned about a future without the quality control that traditional publishing has provided, I find myself having to face the reality of the situation, which is that self-publishing is the way of the future, and it's really the best option, I think, for most people. And if I ever finish this novel of mine, I'm definitely self-publishing it. And not only that, but there are,
coaching interruption.
Sorry,
When
sorry.
you finish your novel, Alissa.
Right. When I finish my novel, which I'll probably publish under a pseudonym, I will self-publish it. Because, I think that that's the best. I mean, and you get to keep most of your profits, and there are other advantages like production time. You can, I mean, it takes, like if someone signs on with us for a self-publishing package in which we go from editing through proofreading to design and interior layout and all that, you're looking at like 6 months possibly, depending on how much editorial work needs to be done, how quickly the author can turn around his or her revisions and review times and all of that. But with traditional publishing, from the time that you sign on until the time your book is actually publicly available is generally at least a year, if not longer. So that matters to some people. And depending on what you're writing about, times are changing so quickly, especially in fields like technology and things. If you have to wait that long to publish a book in a field that's constantly changing, then you might be obsolete by the time that it comes out, So there are a lot of concerns that factor in to which route you'd want to go, but I generally think that self-publishing is the better option for most people.
Or indie publishing, I guess, as it's now known, like self-publishing is becoming a kind of dated term that I think that a lot of people associate with that kind of old stigma universe versus now where it's, indie publishing, where it's author-driven and market-driven, where, the market says, here's what we're interested in. So, Alissa, just a quick housekeeping thing. Your audio at some point went in and out. So whatever cables you have, push everything in a little bit tighter. And audience who's watching, I want to invite you to submit your questions for Alissa about writing and specifically your books or your projects or in general, and then we can answer them. So I'm going to play devil's advocate then, Alissa, and say, well, that sounds great, but in a world where everyone is, producing content, this is what the big six publishers say, right? If everyone's publishing, if everyone's putting stuff out there, and a lot of it, is crap, as they say, then how will people know what to read? Will everything then be kind of, everything then is, the whole market is brought down. This was a bit of the argument. A lot of people got really angry with, the 50 Shades phenomenon, for example. This was a woman who was writing fan fiction. One could argue not necessarily in a very skilled manner, but she, had rabid audiences, including me, who read her stuff, or my mom read it and said, hey, read this, and so so she had a direct contact with her audience, who it then went viral and sold the book for her. But so how do you address that part of it, the curation, the fact that curation then is gone if everyone is just putting whatever out there?
Yeah, that's the part that really concerns me and is what drove me to make Red Pen Print more than just, because it started out as just an editorial services company, because that's what I do, obviously, is edit. So originally we only offered various levels of editing, and but then I started to look around at what was happening and realized that, I mean, yes, I worry about the lack of curation, but at the same time, there's nothing that we can do about it. Like, the world is changing whether we like it or not, and the digital revolution is completely changing the publishing industry, and in the next 10 years, it's not going to look anything like it does now, and there's no stopping that. So I figured that the only thing I could possibly do was to try to offer authors the kind of quality control that a traditional publisher would have in the past. From making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, to making sure that the layout is unobtrusive and looks nice and doesn't make people go, oh, what happened here? Like, you should never notice the layout of a book, and if you do, that's a big problem, and that's something that happens in self-publishing sometimes, especially when people don't fork up the money to get it professionally formatted and just upload files, because you can do that, and depending on things, it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So anyway, I figured that the only thing that I can possibly do is try to provide that for authors, because the traditional publishing model is going to disappear, and there are still going to be authors in the world like you and like me who still care about the quality of literature, and so that's what Red Pen Print is we're trying to fill that gap, and I think that we're going to see a lot more companies like mine popping up over the next few years as other editors and other creative professionals of all sorts who have been involved in book publishing start to realize that this is something that we can't fight against,
Yes, I think it's really, really exciting, that I remember when, I realized, I thought, okay, I have, a book deal with Simon & Schuster, beautiful people, wonderful people, but I realized the week before, I think it was 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks before my book was coming out, that nothing was scheduled. Like, I was like, okay, I have a book coming out in 2 weeks, and there's nothing happening, like. And once I realized, because I did not know, it sounds crazy now, but I didn't know that marketing and now selling this book was up to me, because I felt like, okay, well, you invested in this book, and so this is our venture together, and so you want it to be successful. But then what I realized is that and there are pluses and minuses to going either route, and people have to decide what's right for them. That if if Abiola Abrams goes under, then, you know, a big corporation, they're still standing, you know, so because you know, the bulk of their income is Stephen King or, you know, John Grisham or whomever,
Exactly.
you know, at the time. And so
Hmm.
once I realized that, then I was able to, you know, to fly into, you know, like, okay, marketing mode, you know, getting the book out and, you know, planning a book release party and contacting the stores and, you know, contacting Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and whoever, and arranging events. But I didn't know. And then they helped me, you know, like once the publisher saw like, oh wow, people are reading this, and, you know, Barnes and Noble is having events and it's here and it's there, then their publicist then got on board and helped me then to, you know, make all of that bigger. But it was really, really interesting that I was like, you know, coming to the launch of the book and not realizing, oh, it's my job to now, you know, get this book out there. So here's a question for you, Alissa. Someone wants to know what your opinions are on self-publishing novels on Kindle or other ebook platforms.
Well, I think that it's a great idea. I think that any author publishing today who does not publish in digital format is remiss because it unnecessarily limits your audience. And I'd say the same thing for publishing in print. And I encourage everyone that I work with to publish both print and digital versions because there are people who prefer to read on screens and there are people who prefer to read on paper. And that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. So you don't want to alienate a huge chunk of people who might read your book simply because you aren't providing it in the platform or in the, you know, in the way that they prefer to read. So I think that not just Kindle, but other ebook platforms too are a good idea because, I mean, I know that there are a lot of authors starting to become concerned about the sort of Amazon monopoly situation that is happening in publishing right now. And I also, I mean, I share some of those concerns. And as much as Amazon is great and convenient and, you know, I kind of love it, so I can't really say too much bad about it because I use it all the time. But at the same time, I don't want to see a world in which Amazon controls all of literature either. So I encourage publishing on not just Kindle, but also, you know, other e-reader platforms.
That's good advice. Good advice. Okay, so I have a question for you about the money that there are a lot of, you know, I think previously they were called vanity press companies where that encourage authors to hand over, you know, a check for $35,000 or whatever, you know, just hand us this money and then it ends up being disastrous for them. Can you speak about what those companies are? Because people might feel like, well, what's the difference between that and your company? And you know, can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So basically, the difference is that vanity publishers are actually the publisher of your book. Like they own the rights. So you pay them, and they publish your book, and they generally don't offer any kind of editing support or anything like that. They will publish anything. There's no standards. And so as long as you have the money, they will publish your book in any condition and then, you know, they own the rights and they generally give you, they pay royalties. So basically they're making a lot of money off of you. And they're just generally sleazy people that you don't want to get involved with. And what we do is we don't have any involvement in the publication process itself. So we just, you know, we offer all kinds of support from editing to design to marketing, but of course authors are free to pick and choose what they think they need. And, you know, I always tell people, like, if you know an artist or a graphic designer or an InDesign expert, you know, like, you don't necessarily need us for everything, but we offer all of the things so that people have a one-stop place that they can go for help with all of those types of services. And yes, it is an investment, but I think that, you know, if you're really serious about being an artisanal publisher, my preferred term, from this lovely book that I encourage anyone writing a book to read.
Wait, what was the title? What's the
It's
title?
called Ape.
Okay.
Author, Publisher, Entrepreneur, How to Publish a Book.
Wonderful.
And it's by these two guys who, and it's, they're nonfiction writers, so it's a little more geared toward nonfiction books, but their advice is applicable to anyone publishing a book in the modern age, and it has a lot of good advice about the whole process. Anyway, artisanal publishers. What was I going to say about them?
No, you had explained the difference between the Vanity Press people and your company, and you had started to say, yeah, that it is going to cost you some money to invest in your project. And I want you, when you continue that, to just one of the reasons also that I wanted to have this conversation is that someone contacted me and she said, I got a book deal, yay! And it was from one of these Vanity Press people, and so it was like a little bit awkward because I want her to feel encouraged and didn't want to burst her bubble, but that's not a book deal, or is it? Can you continue?
No, it's not a book deal, because a book deal would be with, so traditional publishing is, the difference between traditional and Vanity is that traditional publishers pay you. So a book deal is when a publisher pays you to acquire your book, and then generally they give you some kind of advance, and with the expectation that your book is going to sell enough copies that they will make back that advance, and then if they make back that advance, they will then start paying out additional monies to you, right? And Vanity publishers make you pay them up front. So you never want to publish with someone who makes you pay up front. And then us, we are just an author services company. And yes, I was going to say that that it is an investment, but I mean, you have to think of it as a business. I mean, if you're a writer, then your book is your business, and any business requires an investment. I mean, I've been in business for 2.5 years now, and I continue to put more money into the company than I get out of it, and like that's just the way it is, and the way it's going to be for the next couple of years probably, because starting a business is really hard and it requires that you put something in to get something out. So people who are concerned about the cost, like, yes, I understand that it's a big investment, but if you're really serious and you want to produce a quality product, then it's something that I think that you can save up for, certainly. And I have a lot of people who do. Like I have a client right now who we did what did we do? A critique? No, just an initial review. I just did an initial review, and he's like, okay, well, this all sounds great, but give me a couple months because I need to save up to be able to afford it. And that's, that's great. But it is. I mean, it's not going to be cheap to produce a good, because publishing a book is not a cheap process. That's why that's how traditional publishers put a lot of money into creating these objects of literature. And if you don't want to go through them, or if in the future that option becomes unavailable, then that burden then falls on the author.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think that there's any escaping that burden. I think that's why there's so much crap in the self-publishing world, because there are people who think that they can, circumvent all of those things that you need to produce a good book, and sure you can, and you can take your totally unedited Word document and upload it to Kindle, and you can be a published author, and that's fine. But I mean, for me, I would never want my name attached to something that wasn't as close to perfect as I could possibly make it.
Agreed. Okay, so you have another question coming in for you, Alissa. If I want to approach the traditional publishing route, would you advise working with an agent?
Yes. I think that's always a good idea, I mean, agents are your advocate, you know, they're your liaison between the publisher and you. You know, the publisher wants to acquire something that will make them a lot of money for as little money as possible, and you want to, you know, presumably you probably want to, if you're going to sell your baby, to do it at the highest possible price, you know? So an agent is the person who kind of bridges that gap, you know? So I think that an agent is definitely a good idea, but at the same time, what's the future for agents? You know, like in a world where traditional publishing is disappearing, how are agents going to be able to support themselves, and how much longer are they even going to be around? Like, how much longer is that going to be a viable career opportunity for anyone? I don't know.
It's definitely something to think about. Okay, so your company also offers book design. Can you talk a little bit about interior as well as exterior design and address the question someone saying, well, you know, my brother has Photoshop or I have Photoshop, so why do I need you to make me a cover or whoever?
Maybe you don't. First of all, I mean, you know, I never want to pressure anyone into anything that they don't think that they need, because as an artisanal publisher, you are in complete control, and that's, you know, I mean, that's one of the greatest things about, you know, self-publishing, is that you get to control the whole process, and it's your baby, and it gets to go out into the world the way you want it, and that's great. So, you know, if you know someone who knows Photoshop and you know what you want your cover to look like and they can produce it for you, then that's perfectly fine. But the thing to think about with covers is that your cover is your main marketing tool. I mean, it is the thing that readers are first going to see. If they don't like the cover, they're not going to look inside. And this applies both online and in, you know, brick and mortar bookstores. You know, you pick up a book or you go to Amazon and click on a book and you look at the cover, and that's the first thing you see. And if that turns you off, then you're not going to read the book, you know. And then the second thing is the synopsis, of course. But so your cover design is vitally important, and it's not fair, but you know, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but if we're honest, everyone does. You know, that's just the way that it is. So, you know, I think that professional cover design is generally a good idea, or at least maybe consultation with someone who knows marketing when you're planning your book. You know, if you have someone who can do it, that's great. But when you're thinking about what you want the front of your book to look like, you might not, like, you might want to get an outside opinion, and especially from someone who has some kind of marketing know-how, because just because, you know, it's like this really cool scene from your book that you think looks great, and maybe it does look great, but maybe it doesn't accurately convey what your book is actually about, you know, like maybe it's misleading, or maybe it's not, I don't know, like there are a lot of concerns, you know, and so I think that it's a good idea to think about talking to someone who knows something about marketing when you're planning your book cover. And then the thing about interior design is that it should be completely invisible. If at any time you are reading a book and you are pulled out of what you're reading because you notice that something is wonky with the formatting, that's like the worst thing you can do to a reader. You know, a reader never wants to be pulled out of enjoyment of a story, or, you know, the thread of an argument in a nonfiction book, because someone didn't do their job in terms of formatting. So the reason that formatting is important is just to make sure that it's not noticeable. And there are a lot of different file formats that are needed for to upload to various sites, and, you know, so those all have to be built individually in InDesign. And, you know, there are sites where you can directly upload your Word document, and if you want to risk it, then that's totally up to you. And I've seen it turn out okay, but I've also seen it turn out not okay. So I think it's sort of a risky proposition. But the thing about self-publishing too is that you can, Like you can upload your book to Kindle and then you can purchase it, and if you notice something is wrong with it, you can fix it and then upload a new copy, and then anyone who's bought it will get an updated version. And also in print, before you actually put it out for sale, you can order yourself like a proof copy and make sure that it looks okay, and then again you can upload a new file. So, you know, you can always test out different things. If you're, trying to keep the costs low, you might think about doing something like, like testing out interior design, seeing if you can make it look good yourself. But the thing to remember in terms of ebooks especially is that not everything looks great on older devices. Like I have a Kindle too, and it's wonky sometimes. Like formatting doesn't look the same on it as it does on some other devices. So formatting is a whole giant headache, really. But I think that both cover and interior design are important, and I don't necessarily think that you need to pay for them, but I think that you do need to be very conscious of them, and make sure that you're producing work that looks good, whether or not you're hiring someone to do it or you have a friend who owes you a favor, or you choose to go about it. I think that are aware of those concerns and paying attention to things like that, because those are things that you as an author need to be, you know, that are part of your job as an author when you're also the publisher. Those things are also your job.
Well, along those lines, for artisanal publishers, that then, along with the question, well, my brother has Photoshop, is, well, my sister's an English major. Can she just, my sister's an English major, should I pay you? She's a good writer. Why doesn't she just edit it?
That's, yeah. Well, first of all, an English major does not an editor make. I mean, yes, my degrees are in English literature, obviously, but I sort of groomed myself toward becoming an editor rather than, because most people who are English literature majors are on a professor track. I mean, that's the main career outcome of that degree. So I kind of, knowing that I started to realize that I wanted to pursue editing sometime during my master's degree. So I did things like, take a grammar class to brush up on things on the technicalities, and so I mean, an English degree could help someone critique a manuscript, like your sister with an English degree is probably better than, some other random person to critique it because they've been trained in critical reading, but that doesn't make them an editor. And editing it's about so much more too. And I worked with people at Graphic Orb and in my various workplaces. I've worked with people, with other editors and other proofreaders, and while they're all really amazing and they were wonderful people to work with, sometimes people are big sticklers for the rules, which is great in a proofreader, because proofreading is the final step, and in proofreading you're concerned with technical details like, are they using the serial comma or not? Just all of that little things, making sure that there are no typos and that kind of stuff. So being a big stickler for the rules is really helpful in that context, but editing is a lot more than that. So because you have to worry not only about the rules, but also about the author's style and about, you just have to be very sensitive to the author's particular way of writing. And then so I don't know, back to why an English major is not necessarily an editor. I guess I don't know, it's a lot of things, I mean, I have both the English background and the proofreading background, and the detail-oriented perfectionist in me plus the creative writer in me, I think is what, like, they come together to make me exceptionally good at what I do. Um, and you know, just having an English degree doesn't do that. You know, it's a lot more than that. And an English degree doesn't properly train anyone to an editor. So, you know, like, the career experience was really important for me to be able to actually do this, and you know, learning to have, like, to balance a bunch of different style guides, and you know, to adhere to a bunch of different client rules, like, that taught me how to, you know, how to be sensitive to different voices and that kind of thing. And so I don't know, I just think that there's a whole lot more that goes into editing than than just having a firm grasp of the English language. Like, yes, okay, if you have an English degree, you probably are pretty solidly, you know, you have a pretty good grasp on English, but that doesn't mean that you are in any way qualified to edit. And another thing is that your sister or anyone in your family or anyone that you're really close to is, unless they're the kind of person that you know that, like, unless they're no bullshitter, you know, if there's someone in your life who you know will give you completely honest and constructive and objective feedback, then that's great, and those are the kind of people that you want to be beta reading your book. But generally, your sister or your mom or your best friend are gonna sugarcoat it, and you know, like, or another thing is that they might not be able to articulate what, like, how to fix things. You know, like, it's a lot easier to be like, I don't like this, than to say, this isn't working and here's why. You know, back to that again. Like, it's not just recognizing that things aren't working, but it's being able to help guide someone to make it so it does work.
Yes, okay. And I'm glad that you said that. And no, and that also, you know, that just because someone is a writer doesn't mean that they're an editor. It's two different parts
Yeah.
of the brain that you're using. Or, you know,
Mhm.
again, like you spoke about in the beginning, the different kinds of editing and the different things that you do. You know, like my internships when I was in college, I interned at Elle Magazine and I interned at McGraw-Hill Publishing and did copywriting and copy editing. Well, that then didn't qualify me then to go and edit books or even edit, you know, magazines necessarily, because I was editing college text brochures or whatever it is. So be very specific, I guess, with when you are looking for an editor about what their background is. And that's one of the great things about, you know, if people go with your company, which I highly urge them to, redpenforrent.com, that, you know, that you have an incredible team of people with you and that you are full service and have a grasp not only on, you know, writing and editing, but also the industry at large. And so we only have a few minutes left, but it's really important to talk about marketing. And so your company also offers marketing. What can you say about marketing in this short so the big topic of marketing in our 7 minutes that we have left?
um, well, honestly, I personally don't really know all that much about marketing, which is why I have someone on my team who does, you know.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention too that one of the things that makes my team so great and unique is that they are, with I think only one exception, people that I know in real life and have been friends with for a very long time, and most of them are people that I have worked with. Actually, I think all of them are people that I've worked with in some capacity in the past, and so I know and trust their, not only their skills but their work ethic, and we're a very cohesive team that works together, you know. So it's not like you're just getting bounced around among random people with no, you know, like, I'm always the person, I'm always project manager, so you're always dealing directly with me, and then also directly with whoever else is working on your project. So marketing, I am not really the marketing expert, so but fortunately for me, my best friend, in a very roundabout way, ended up finding herself in the marketing field. And when I approached her about joining Red Pen for Rent, she was only too eager to do that and to shift her focus specifically to book marketing. She'd previously been doing local small business marketing in a small town in Oregon where she lives. So which kind of makes her well suited for books, really, because an indie author, you are basically a small business, you know.
Yeah.
So so she comes from kind of that background and also a literature background, and you know, she is also a writer and is working on a children's book right now. But marketing is
Wait,
pretty much
even
totally.
define it. Wait, define book marketing first, and then yeah, we
Um,
may not know what that means. So they say, well, what is book marketing? Why do I need it? I've written this book. I put it there. If you build it, they will come. You know, I don't know what you're talking about. What would you say?
okay. They won't come. I mean, especially in this world where we are just flooded with content, you know, like there are so many self-published books, and if you want to, you know, I mean, and not it's not just about making money either, but if you want to get your message out there to people, if you want to share your story, and if you want to make money, all of these things, you need to do some work to grow a platform, which is, you know, basically all the people who know about you and your work. Um, so it's definitely very important to get the word out there, and that is, you know, that ranges from, I mean, obviously social media. You need to have a social media presence and a website in this day and age, but also more traditional forms of book marketing. You know, like Leslie is, like she can help with everything. You know, she'll get down there with you and call up bookstores and help you, you know, plan a whole local book tour if that's what you want to do, you know. So traditional things like, and not just, you know, book tours at local bookstores, showing up at events in your local area, um, you know, joining writers groups, just anything to broaden the number of people who know that you've written a book. Because just because you write a book doesn't mean anyone knows that. You have to tell people. You know, you can't just write the book and publish it. Then you have to tell people that you did it so that they can find it.
Yes.
So that's why you need to market.
Right, which is challenging for a lot of creative people, you know, who are introverts
Yeah.
and feel more comfortable with the, you
Mhm.
know, with your laptop,
Oh yeah.
you know, in front of wherever saying, hey, I wrote this book. But what I recommend to my coaching clients is a shift in the way that you think about your work. I had a client who said to me, oh, you know, the fun part is over. I've written the book. And I can tell you that it was not a fun for her. Like most of us, writing the book was not fun. But, you know, she's like, okay, the fun part is finished. Now the horrible part happens where I have to sell it. And I said, well, let's talk about a shift in perception. Rather than thinking, now I've got to sell this thing like you're selling a notepad or whatever, think of it as, you know, that presumably you wrote this book because you have something to share with the world and share, you know, share with your audience. And so think about it like, okay, if I am in service, how do I now get this offering to as many people as possible, rather than how can I sell this? Because I think that people are,
Yeah.
you know, audiences are really wise and sophisticated, and I don't like someone trying to offer me something that I don't want. However, if someone is trying
Exactly.
to offer me something that I am the audience for, and that, you know, serves my needs and will either entertain or empower me or somehow make my life better, tell me about it. I want to know about it. And so you're doing the world a disservice if you have created this wonderful book like this specific client that I'm thinking of, and then you don't want to bring it into the world, because you're cheating the world. People want to know, people want to hear. There's an audience, hopefully, presumably, you know, waiting for what it is that you have to say, and that's why you put this book out there.
Yeah, and you're cheating yourself too,
Yes.
because, you know, you went to all this work to create this product that you want to share with people, so So do it, share it.
Do it, share it.
And you know, that's the advice that I see over and over again from marketing people too, is that audiences are very turned off by obvious sales tactics. So, you know, what you want to do is become an expert in something and then share your knowledge with people, and that's what's going to draw people to you. So, you know, whatever it is that you wrote about, you know, you're an expert on your book, and there are people out there who want to read it. So find a way to share with them that makes them want to come to you.
Well,
like we're doing right now.
Right now, we are being of service. We are sharing, which, you know, for me, as you know, is everything to me, my purpose for being on this planet. So let me ask you then, Alissa, and we look forward to your novel, which you said you're going to write under a pseudonym. So any Melissa, let me see, how would your name be? Like Melissa McGowan.
Nothing that obvious.
So what, besides just write, what would your next piece of grand advice be for someone maybe who has a finished book or an idea or whatever it is and is fearful, is terrified? What are they going to think? People are going to laugh at me. What should I do now? What say you of Red Pen for Rent?
Join a writer's group. I think that it is vitally important to have other people who understand your your creative process and who understand what you're going through, because writing is a really solitary pursuit, you know? I mean, most of the time you're writing in your own little bubble, and you need to have other people to commiserate with and other people to bounce ideas off of. And you know, those people, because they are also writers and they have creative works of their own they're working on, they're ideal people to share your work with, to get some, you know, constructive feedback, and to, you know, but they'll be sensitive because they're also writers, and they'll be honest because they're also writers, and you know, they're going to give you what they would want from you. So I think it's really important to have a community, and you know, that goes for any artistic pursuit. Like, I love black and white film photography and have been out of it for a really long time, and so I think I'm going to take a class at a community college this semester just so that I will be surrounded by other photographers to help inspire me to keep creating art. So I think that one of the best things that any creative person can do for themselves is to find a community of like-minded individuals to share your art with.
Well said. In New York, I know that we have Gotham Writers Workshop. I don't know if they have online online workshops as well, but I would assume so. They can also go to meetup.com, and even Craigslist has a lot of writers groups listed. What are other places that you recommend that people go to online, Alissa, to find maybe an online writers group?
Back in the day, I used to belong to writing.com, which was a great community where I found all kinds of supportive people who were really just wonderful and very supportive, and so that was great. But their website's a little dated and definitely looks like it was made in the 90s. There's Wattpad now, which is very popular. And I hear a lot of good things about that. I'm a member, but I don't really do a whole lot with it. I haven't written anything on it or anything. I just sometimes go and look at other things. But I'm Wattpad.
They can friend both of us. Let's say the name. It's Wattpad. It's WATTPAD. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And then LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, real life groups. Where else online? I mean, there are all kinds of online sites dedicated to certain genres too, you know. So if you're writing historical romance, just Google historical romance online writers group. I'm sure that you'll find, you know, if you're the kind of person who's more comfortable hiding behind a computer screen, as I am, then you might feel better joining an online group than doing it in real life. Like, I'm a member of the Chattanooga Writers Guild because I live near Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I basically never go to meetings because I'm afraid of people, which I realize is utterly ridiculous. But if you, like me, are afraid of real life interaction, there are plenty of places online to find support.
Well, can I make a request then of Red Pen for Rent, which I feel like is my family? Perhaps you can add a forum to your site where writers could come and chat it up and meet each other and ask you guys questions and also create groups and all of those kinds of things. And you could then, continue on your mission of serving by being now a hub where we are looking for you because all of the answers are there.
True, yeah, I should talk to my web developer about that. And not only that, but then it could be a place where, people like you who have already published a book could also interact with people who are, people at different phases of the journey talking to each other. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great.
So I will look into that.
Yay! Okay, so as we wrap up, Alissa, just tell people where to find you. Once again, what your company offers and what your ideal client is.
We are at redpenforrent.com, and we offer editorial, design, and marketing services mainly for self-publishing authors, but we certainly don't turn away anyone who's looking to go down the traditional road either. And even if you're going into traditional publishing, you might benefit from a critique or some kind of editing service, certainly. And our ideal clients are anyone who wants to produce a quality work of literature, basically. Ideally, people who are writing in genres that we're familiar with. We have 3 editors on the team, so between or among all 3 of us, or between the 3 of us. Anyway, we we have a broad range of specialties in both fiction and nonfiction, but of course we're not right for every genre. So, but that information's on our website. So yeah, anyone who wants to produce a quality piece of literature.
And I urge you to follow Alissa on social media. She is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And do you want to give an email address, or do you just think they should just go to the site and take it from there?
Oh, sure. It's Alissa at redpenforrent.com. That's also all over the website. And yeah, we're on Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, Twitter. Yeah, all the usual social media places you can find us.
And you don't have to be in Chattanooga, Tennessee to work with her.
No, you can be anywhere.
Well, thank you so much, Alissa. I think that this was very informative, and I'm really thrilled that we can do this. I feel like, first of all, actually, as my editor, let me also congratulate you on, our nomination for an African American Literary Award. And
yes.
This was a great way for us to give back to other writers. So very exciting, and I look forward to your continued success and continuing to be a part of the Red Pen for Rent family.
Yes, me too. And congratulations. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you if you are watching and you are wanting to be a writer in any way, shape, or form. As Alissa said, just write. Have a good night or a good morning wherever you are. Bye.